Hi, my name is Jeremy Monteiro, and I'm the author of the book Late Night Thoughts of a Jazz Musician. I'm very, very honored and pleased, as well as very humbled to be one of the final 20, one of the finalists of the Golden Door Awards, and also to be nominated for the Rex Karmaveer Medal, which is concurrently being spoken about as well as at these awards. I'm really happy to be here with my friend Kannan Chandran, who is the editor of the book. And what we're going to do is we're going to read three essays from the book, and then Kannan and I will have a discussion about it. But first, I'd like to just say hello to Kannan and welcome him.
Thank you, Jeremy. Hi, I'm Kannan Chandran, and I've had the pleasure of working with Jeremy on the book, helping edit it. But our relationship goes a lot further back than that, from the days of Monteiro and during my time at the newspapers. I've seen Jeremy evolve as a musician, as a person, and I think one of the key things about this book is that it's not just about being a musician, it's about life. It's about lessons learned in life. And that's what Jeremy brings across in his various essays in the book. And it's worth reading using the lens of somebody who's not just a music lover or a jazz lover or a Jeremy Monteiro fan, but somebody who appreciates the life's lessons that you can learn from some other people. So Jeremy's is a perfect example of how a musician can also contribute to the knowledge and awareness of society.
Thank you, Kannan. So this is the first of three essays from the book that I would like to read for you, and then Kannan and I will have a bit of a chat. So the first chapter, or the first essay, is essay number 2. It's called A Love Letter. In love, I grow more in love with you all the time. Although you've been in my life for more than half a century, my love for you grows stronger all the time with each passing year. I always learn something new about you, which makes you unceasingly refreshing and interesting to me. My love for you grows with each passing year. Even though you sometimes frustrate me, and although I often don't understand you, after I take a walk and come back, I'm ready to try and make it work again. In all honesty, there were times I did doubt if we could go on together. How silly of me. You are often with me as I fall asleep, when I travel around the world, when I'm happy and when I'm sad, when I'm well and when I'm not, when my pocket is empty and when my pocket is full, when I'm playing with you alone or when I'm listening to you, when I have you to myself or when I'm sharing you with my close friends. Through it all, and even when you are in the hands of another, you never cease to amaze me and bring me joy. Some 5 decades on, and I'm even more convinced that this is going to be a lifelong relationship. Thank you for all the joy and fulfillment you bring me. Music, I love you now and I always will.
Jeremy, so that was a love affair, literally, right? Probably one of the longest lasting ones that you've had and will have. I think one of the key things as I was reading it, and rereading it over time and listening to it again now is, we all know you're into jazz, we all know you're into music scene. How did you choose this line, that you would become a musician and that jazz would be your thing? Was it an emotional choice, or was it a sort of a considered, well thought through decision?
Well, when I first started learning music when I was 6 years old from Miss Quack, she was wonderful because she taught me all the rudiments and made me feel very comfortable with the instrument. And actually, she kind of sparked my initial love for music. But after that, when we moved away and I went to the next music teacher, it was so much of a chore learning music that I started to actually dislike my music lessons. She was too strict, and with the ruler, wanting to hit my knuckles and all that kind of thing. And but I was very fortunate when my family, my parents and the whole family moved to Kota Kinabalu in 1969 when I was 9 years old, because my father was going to run Borneo Skyways, an air charter company there. that my mother went looking for a music teacher, a piano teacher for me, and lo and behold, she found this great teacher, Mr. Tan Zi Tong, one of the first master's degree holders in piano performance, who lived in Kota Kinabalu, and he really sparked my love for music again. Mainly because anything he was trying to teach, whether it was technique or whether it was feel or even something to try to ask me to connect with inspiration, he could demonstrate how everything he said. They often say those who know do, those who don't teach. But he was a teacher who knew how to do, and that really, really sparked my love for music again. And 2 or 3 years later, I was listening to Quincy Jones' record. Toots Thielemans was playing on a tune by Ray Brown called Brown Ballad. It was so beautiful. I was standing in the middle of my living room, just listening to it, and there were tears in my eyes. And my mom came up to me and said, "What's wrong with you standing in the middle of the living room and crying?" He says, "No, Mom, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard." And it was at that point I decided that I wanted to be a musician. I was maybe 13 years old. Yeah. But I was classically trained pianist. I spent 8 years learning classical piano. And in my early career, when I played from 17 years old, I played on more than 300 pop albums. So although my face to the public and my prime mode of expression is jazz, I really love all kinds of music. Now, and as I talked to you earlier on, I'm working on orchestral, nondescript, classical or jazz. I don't really want a label on it, but orchestral music.
Could you, if you were starting now, come through this whole process the same way you did in the past and still be where you're at?
I think so. I mean, a lot of young people love music, and you'll be surprised people in their teenage years now have the skill level of producing a song in their bedroom with a computer that I never attained till I was in my mid-20s. So it comes so natural to a lot of young people now. Music is a very primal thing when you think about it. I mean, back even in the time when the first humans appeared, music was so much a part of the social experience of living in a village or in communities, and it has been with us forever. I think it's quite primal, actually.
How do you think music has helped us through these tough times, this COVID, this pandemic that's going through the world? How do you think music has helped to give us more hope, more spirit, enliven things up?
Yeah. I think music and art in general is there to basically soothe you, to calm you, to provoke thought, to also raise feelings of hope, and make you feel feelings that you may not want to feel. So a sad song with poignancy may make you feel a certain amount of sadness that you need to feel for a particular thing that's going on for you to then grieve and move on. So I think music has always had, in my opinion, a really healing effect on people through the ages.
Yeah, and it should continue to do that.
Yes.
So what's next for you think?
Well, what I'm working on now, I mean, my work as a pianist, I still love playing the piano, but my composition, because in 1991 I won an award from the International Radio Festival of New York. I won a silver medal for best music score, which was an orchestral piece of music, and then I just stopped writing. It's like after winning the award, I just stopped writing large ensemble work, and then I would farm it out to other people to do. But I want to get back into it, and some projects have come along for me next year to write for a couple of orchestras, and so it's really rekindled my love and passion for wanting to write large ensemble music yet again.
So, but your current interest in the present forms of music that you play will still carry through.
Yes, and of course I'm so involved in the Jazz Association Singapore with our 2 orchestras. So the next essay I'd like to read for you is essay number 7, or chapter 7. It's called "If You Don't Ask." I was sad to learn of the passing of Mr. Charles Batu, the famous food and beverage director formerly of the Shangri-La Group and Westin Asia Pacific, on 14th of March 2014. I first worked for him in 1981 at the Shangri-La Hotel in Singapore, then the Westin Singapore in the 1990s, and finally at the Shangri-La Hong Kong in the year 2000. Once, after a ballroom performance at the Westin Singapore with famed Asian singing star Francis Yip, I went up to him and I asked, "Mr. Batu, how come the Filipino dance band got a free buffet lunch and my backing band for Francis Yip didn't get the free lunch?" He looked at me incredulously and growled, "You don't ask, you don't get." Then he added more gently, "If you want something, ask." The most I can say is no, but if it's a reasonable request and I can give it to you, I will. He winked and walked off. He left me standing there stunned after delivering one of the most life-changing lessons I have learned at age 27. I can't begin to thank him for that lesson, for all the things I have received in my life, because I became unafraid to ask for what I needed. As long as it's a reasonable request, people seldom say no. This was such an important lesson that I have to repeat it. You don't ask, you don't get.
Is that why you should get an agent?
Actually, nowadays, the not just for me, but for any musician who's trying to do this business, you can't afford an agent. I mean, like, in the old days, you would have a manager who just grooms you, creates your whole identity and so on, an agent who does the booking for you, and a lawyer to take care of all the legal that goes on. And then on top of that, you have your freelance PR people who do your work for you. So now musicians have to do everything, and in fact, some musicians who say that they don't really think it's a good idea to self-promote, and then they will say, oh, Wes Montgomery or John Coltrane, they never had to bother about self-promoting, and so for me to do this and on Facebook, I don't really want to do it. I said, well, don't forget that Wes Montgomery and John Coltrane had managers, record company, PR people, agents booking shows for them, publicists, and so a whole machinery working with them. So now we are our own machinery. So I think that the age of having agents and managers, except for the very few who are already very, very successful, is gone, really.
So this, to flip your topic around, is it also a case of people being too shy to ask because they feel that they don't deserve to ask? Is that mentality in musicians, or is it something that is still pervasive in the industry? That the musicians are, well, they're paid to do what it is that you're supposed to do, don't ask for more.
Right. I think not so much confined to musicians, but I think many people feel that it's not very nice to ask for things you need. And I think that actually is a problem across society. If you don't ask for what you need in any area, then how are people around you going to know what it is that you need? And then the transaction of human interaction is curtailed if you don't know how to. Of course, you don't be one of those people who incessantly ask for things non-stop and become very annoying. I think if you're fair in your relations with people and there's something that for example, if let's say someone has asked you to work for 30 hours a week and they agree to pay you so much for it, you end up you're working 55, 60 hours a week. After a while, if you're doing good work and your employer likes you, there's nothing wrong to say, hey boss, I'm really working like 15, 20 hours more than we talked about when I first started the job. Could I please have a little more money, because it's really, if not, I have to go and look for another part-time job to sustain or to sort of make up for the income that I need to make. People will not be unreasonable, I don't think. And like I said, then when you have this a culture of asking reasonably when you need to ask for things, I don't think people will. The most they can say is no, and you've got to teach yourself to go that if they say no, that it's going to be, there's no resentment, and you just keep on going if you want to keep on going.
People don't take no very easily, right?
Yeah.
More often than not, they get very upset, and it affects them, affects the relationship.
Yes, you're right.
Is that one of the reasons why people
tend
to not ask?
It could be, but I think the culture of asking has to be also, you have to have, to tell yourself that you have to be willing to expect a no. Because this formula only works if you have to ask for what you need and what you want in a situation, but in order to continue a life without being unhappy, you also have to be willing to accept no for an answer, especially if they can rationalize why it's no. And then, of course, if that situation doesn't continue to be fulfilling to you, then you walk, and go to the next situation.
Can you be too passionate about something that it works against you? You're too passionate that you love it so much what you're doing that you don't mind, even though you feel that it's not what you should be getting, but you don't mind because you're doing what you love. And you don't want to rock the boat. You don't want to.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that in all of us, and I think even sometimes I find myself doing things. if I've said yes to something, I've recently said yes to something because I thought I was doing it for a friend, and next thing you know, I'm actually find out that it's a whole big organization behind it. So I felt I shortchanged myself. But then again, I already said yes, so I follow through and do it. But I think that at the end of the day, we do the things that, especially as artists or musicians or writers, we do the things that we love because we love it. But at the same time, if we find after a while, for a prolonged period of time, that this thing is taking away the time that you could spend looking after yourself or the time that you could spend with your loved ones, we have to learn how to walk away or move to something else that's more equitable.
It must be difficult now, though, because there's not much happening in the music scene because of the COVID situation. Will it become an issue or a challenge for musicians to start ramping up once things start picking up? Do you think businesses will be able to give you what you're asking for? Or do you see it both having to rationalize their operations?
Well, I think that no one can really tell what the world is going to be like in a year or in 2 years' time, and we can try to extrapolate from what we know, but I think that a lot of what we assume to be true is not necessarily going to be what happens, right? So my hope is that when people are able to gather in large groups again, and people are starved of entertainment, that actually there'll be a sort of correction. People will start to hire musicians and artists and dancers and theater groups to do a lot more than they normally would, just because they're so starved for it, and then after that you'll find everything will find its level again. So who knows? But one thing for sure is that since although COVID will go away, we do live in what is now known as a VUCA world with so many vulnerabilities and uncertainties and challenges, and so on. So that this whole idea of online music, for example, is not going to go away. I think in good times it will be complementary to having live shows, and then if something happens again where the world has some kind of catastrophic thing again where people can't gather in groups again 5 years, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, that we will have in place that a culture of having, and even if not, for example, let's say with this live stream technology that is going on now, say Elton John plays in Shanghai, but I live in Chengdu, I don't want to fly there, but I know I can buy a ticket and I can watch in my beautiful TV set at home in a great sound system and sort of be there when I can't actually be in the locale of a particular concert that attracts me.
What was it like? I mean, you did a few concerts remote in that way, right? What is lost by not having an audience?
Well, the whole thing about having an audience is we create this energy vortex where we send our energy through music and just our emotion to the audience, and the audience receives it after a while from the applause and also from the vibe and the energy that they send, which is very, very tangible, even though it's not. I can feel it, or we feel it on stage, and we send it back, and then we create this energy vortex that's palpable. You can almost cut it with a knife, and that's what I miss, that we don't have that kind of interaction.
Do you think it's something you get used to, not having an audience?
Well, when I started doing my live stream, I got so nervous and tense. I mean, I actually felt a weight on my chest, and actually it felt I was more nervous than stepping on the stage in front of, I've performed from anything from a 30-seat jazz club to a stadium of 31,000 people and all points in between. And I can honestly say that I was more nervous in my earlier live streams with nobody in the audience, just me and the camera and my equipment, than I was walking onto a stage with 31,000 people. I don't know why that's the case, but it really was. I mean, now it's become more and more easy as I've been doing it. Now I would say that I have the same level of nervousness, because I still have nervousness even on a live show. And I think that little bit of nervousness before you go on, that butterflies in your stomach, actually helps you to give a good show. This is essay number 13. It's titled, "How many hours does that shirt cost?" I wish I learned this when I was younger, but I guess it's never too late. I've learned to look at things I want to buy not in terms of how much money the items cost, but in terms of how many hours of work it will cost me. Not hours practicing or playing in front of people who came to listen intently, or hours writing a song or crafting an arrangement, learning a new tune, or teaching a student who really wants to learn. To me, these things are not work, but things I love to do. What I am talking about are the hours of work playing in a noisy bar in front of corporate of a corporate dinner audience who don't care if I'm even there, or with musicians who play music not because they love it, because it's just a way to earn a living, or teaching students who hate music but are there because their parents forced them, or sitting in meetings with people who love the sound of their own voice. These things are hard work, and I always ask myself these days, how many hours of this rubbish work do I want to do in order to buy an item? If I buy less and can therefore spend less time on thankless and frustrating jobs, then I will have more time to do the work that I love, more time for recreation and rest, more time to practice, have a jam session with friends, write songs I want to write, sit and dream up a creative project, laze around with friends at a coffee shop, have long conversations, or just sit quietly with loved ones, drive a loved one to an appointment, watch a movie, cycle, walk in the park, or just stare at nothing. Having time, to me, that is real wealth. Sure, we have to pay for things, phone bills, the mortgage, living expenses, school fees for the children, and the occasional nice thing. So we have to do some jobs we don't like along with the work that we love. But if I can recognize the things that will only bring fleeting happiness and that I don't really need, and if I resist buying them by thinking of how many hours I have to work at mundane jobs, I will be able to accrue more real wealth, time.
So Jeremy, this sort of gets into two areas for me. One is the value you place on time and managing your time, right? And the other is on conspicuous consumption.
Yes.
Right. Now, through your career, how much of it have you spent on the kind of jobs you don't really like to do versus the stuff that you like to do? What's the balance like?
Oh, I think that when I got into the second decade of my career in the 80s, I spent too much time doing jobs that were not at all fulfilling but were high income. And I did this because at that point in my life, I was still very interested in nice cars, expensive watches, and so on and so forth. And also I had uncontrollable wanderlust. And so I would, because I was earning so much money in the 80s writing jingles, I could just say on a Tuesday, I feel like going to the French Riviera. I just jump on the plane and then just go. But that was too much money to be spending. And after a while, that you tend to even depend a little bit too much on your credit cards and so on. So it's a vicious cycle to when you don't realize that actually, if you want to spend money on things that are not really what brings you happiness, or the fleeting happiness, fleeting joy, you will end up spending many more hours of doing things that make you suffer. So I guess in the beginning, I would say I spent 70% of my time doing those kind of jobs. When I hit about my late 40s, I would say I started to already now spend maybe 40% of my time doing those kind of jobs. And I'm very happy to say that now, having just turned 60, you still have to do those kind of jobs because they do help to pay the bills and mortgages and so on and so forth. But it's now 30% that I do that kind of work, and 70% of the work I do is really fulfilling work that, although it may bring me income, it really is very fulfilling.
So is it because you've consciously decided you do not need to spend that kind of money and buy the things, or
yes,
or have you just changed?
Yes, I mean at one point, I had like 50 watches in my collection, back 20 years ago, and you go, why? You only need one watch to tell you the time, basically. So and cars as well. I mean, I've lost my interest in expensive cars, and so I don't. If a car can get me from point A to point B, and it's got a decent air conditioning and a decent stereo system, that's all I need.
I could take a Grab.
Yeah, but I like this. I still haven't given up having a good stereo system in the car. So. I don't think that's too much of a luxury to have, but I think I really have lost my interest in things. I mean, I still love things of beauty, But if I like something really beautiful, I don't have to own a piece of art. I can see it in the museum, and if I, for example, if I like to go on a yacht, I don't have to own a yacht. I can just get my friends and I to rent a yacht for the day and enjoy for the day. And then, if I own a yacht, a lot of people own a yacht, only go on their yachts like 3 times a year, right? So if that, so yeah, no, we don't need to own things. And especially now with COVID, right? Don't you think so many people were spending money unnecessarily, and now they realize what's important is look after the family, and that's one side of it, as you said, Kannan, the conspicuous consumption. But the other part of it for me is we can live life so much easier if we don't have to work so hard for the things that we need.
It's a lot cheaper online too, and you realize, why have I been paying so much for this when it's so much cheaper to get it directly online, and they send it to your doorstep.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, do you think that this aspect of life will change the way society functions? Will people want less of the more flashy things and opt to instead go for more value in life?
Yes, certainly. I think that people, firstly, I think that, as you said, because people find an easier way to shop from home, then more people will actually do online shopping. And also people will stop to really want to spend so much money on luxury goods. I mean, at the end of the day, there's so many other things to enjoy in life besides having this expensive handbag or whatever it is, or a car that we don't really need to have. So I think that retail is going to change drastically over the next 2 or 3 years. So I think it's going to start, patterns of expenditure will start changing. Right. I mean, look, as a musician, I can buy a $500 keyboard and I can buy a $3,500 keyboard, and truly, if I need a tool that brings me joy, also gives me good results, I don't think there's anything wrong to spend the money if you can for the work that you do, or even the things that you spend on that you enjoy. It's not, people should not deprive themselves of enjoying nice things. If I like a nice exercise equipment or a bicycle or a nice TV screen, no one really will begrudge you, but I think, and everyone will think twice when they spend this kind of money going forward. I think there are a lot of unnecessary things that we have to examine for ourselves whether we should spend this money or not, and then count it, as the essay says, count it a number of hours you have to spend doing work that you don't really want to do. So thanks, Kannan, for sitting down and chatting with me, and thanks
for listening.
Yes.